Good morning, fellow ruminators. Welcome back to another session, Rumination with Andrew. Sorry about my voice. I am not having a perfect voice this morning, but I hope that you will follow me as I try to get through this video. My throat is not 100% and seems to be getting worse. I don't know what bug is in the air, but I certainly will try to get through this video this morning. Now, this morning, shall be speaking briefly on the IMF's disastrous effects on Jamaica. Well, the IMF's policies, disastrous effects on the Jamaican economy. Now, many times, we have spoken about the IMF. And I have said on this channel before that the IMF does not represent an organization that is a progressive one. It's not designed or was not designed to assist third world economies in growing. We have been deceived, we have been lied to, and it's time for us to correct that error and to understand that for all these years, for which we have heard that the IMF is there to stabilize us and to stabilize our macroeconomic fundamentals, all of that is economic nonsense. And these policies are designed to enrich the billionaire class and the local and global elites. And it's time for us to understand that and not to be playing games with the International Monetary Fund. It's time for us to wake up to understand that we have long played the games with that institution and the game should be over. The fact of the matter is that our politicians are on board with the diktats of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Now, they say that the International Monetary Fund was designed to help us to overcome or to plan short-term economic growth, while the World Bank is there or was designed to help us to craft some form of long-term economic growth. But neither of these organizations has ever helped us to do that. What we see more is that poverty is more entrenched in a society after they have left or during their tenure there, while they are supervising the structural adjustment program. Now, this morning, the Gleaner newspaper, that is the major newspaper in Jamaica, published an article, which I was a bit surprised that they would publish something like this, because the Gleaner and the Jamaica Observer tend to be on the side of the government and the government policies. They tend to support government policies. And in many times, they do not have opposing voices that are challenging the government, right? They tend to be dancing to the tune of the government, harmonic song. Now, we have here Norris MacDonald, the IMF debt crisis and voter apathy. Is it a demand for change? Now, for those of you who do not know, Jamaica they celebrated their, they had their elections that's the local government elections were held on Monday. And since for the first time, I think in its history, we have not been able to hear any definitive results. And I think that will not be had perhaps until Friday or perhaps next week. I don't know. That seems to be also backward because we prided ourselves at least on having results, if not definitive for the first night, but the following day, we would have some definitive results in terms of who won and who lost. In that election, it seems that the results either have been tampered with or we are seeing that they're playing political, what should I say now? It's a grand political drama. Not sure what is going on there. But the author says here that Dr. Nigel Clark, he's the Minister of Finance and Public Service. Now, this is the celebrated Dr. Clark, who many believe, because he is a Rhodes Scholar and he was educated at Oxford University, that he's able to bring the sort of remedy and the transformation that the Jamaican economy needs. And it is really foolhardy to think that and to put that weight on Dr. Clark's shoulder, because Dr. Clark is not going to be able to transform Jamaica's economy. Dr. Clark was set there to continue in the austere measures implemented by the IMF program. And he is not sidelining that program. He's doing exactly what his slave overlords and his slave masters have told him to do. And he's doing absolutely nothing that is creative, that is innovative, and that will lead us into the land of milk and honey, as many Jamaicans are thinking. In fact, if you speak to Michael Hudson, one of America's greatest economists, he will let you know that in the School of Economics that we have around the world, including the United States, these departments are by no stretch of the imagination progressive. They are following the diktats of the military-industrial complex of the United States, of which the IMF and the World Bank are major arms of that military-industrial complex. They are the economic arms of that complex, if you will. Now, let's get into the weeds of the article, because he has mentioned some very important points that we need to look at and we need to examine. Though Jamaica's local government elections on Monday were hotly contested, there was an extreme low voter turnout. This voter apathy shows clear lack of enthusiasm in the Jamaican people in the direction the country is heading. So already the writer, like me, is asserting that the voter apathy in Jamaica is due to the fact that people are not seeing any change in their lives. Nothing has changed since the 1970s. It's the same thing over and over and over, with governments, succeeding governments, telling us that things are going to improve, and if we just, swallow a bit of medicine, then we are going to be heading to Canaan, to the land of milk and honey, and that we will be able to lift, the economy will be able to lift off the ground, and we are going to see prosperity. In fact, the mantra of this government, its electioneering campaign, that's the JLP government, the Jamaican Labour Party's government in 2016, was prosperity. He thought that his government, which represents my generation, was going to lead Jamaica into prosperity. That was the major election campaign of the Andrew Holness-led JLP party. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing the impoverishment of the people. What we're seeing is that the rich definitely are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And that is the reality. And we're not suggesting here that you might not have one or two poor people who might not have been elevated, but it's not the norm. That is the exception. And people tend to always look at the exception and project it to be the norm. And this is where we deceive ourselves, and then we deceive the entire people on the island. Now, the overall political economic strategy of the government has been focused on the continued management of the International Monetary Fund's program. And we don't know what is happening with that fund. I don't think we understand what the memorandum of understanding is. Does anyone have access to the MOF, the memorandum of understanding? MOE, MOU, I think it is, not MOF, but MOU, right? The memorandum of understanding, in which they tell us, what are the conditionalities and how long the agreement will last for, etc., etc., etc. I have not had any access to that, and I have not seen where any reporters in the major newspapers on the island have unveiled the MOE or the MOE's agenda to Jamaica. Its objectives we have not yet seen. It has not been disclosed. Is that classified information, Andrew Holness? I would like to know. But so far, after almost 50 years, Jamaica still has deep-rooted poverty, which shows that there has been no benefit to poor people despite so many years of terrible suffering. The IMF strategy pursued by both political parties over the years has been, in my opinion, a general search for fool's goals. And he is right. There is no way that the IMF is designed to help us. That is not the objective of the IMF. Right? The IMF's purpose, as we are saying, is to inflict greater suffering and agony on the people and to siphon off the wealth from Jamaica and bring it back to developed countries like the United States. You know, I've always said to people that the lifestyles lived by people in the United States and other developed countries are lived because of the sacrifices of poor people in the what you call the third world countries. So it's very interesting sometimes when Americans and other citizens from developed countries visit these third world countries and they think, oh yes, things are better in the US, and they keep on talking about what is in the US and what is not in the US, not understanding that the sacrifices that are made by the people in the third world, in what you call third world countries, are sacrifices made so that you can have a sort of decent lifestyle, live a sort of decent lifestyle in what is known as developed countries. And that is true. It's the same sort of slavery. Slavery in another name. Neo-colonialism, neo-slavery. This is what it is all about. To bleed the pockets of these third world countries, transfer their wealth over to these developed countries. Hope you're understanding. Now, look at what the author continues to say. Jamaica has been trying to do what no other country in the world has done, and that is to give to IMF even one success story. The IMF, we have not had a success story in Jamaica. For all the sacrifices that the impoverished people, the poor people have made, we have not had a success story. And we have been going to the IMF since 1977. And we have not yet had a success story. I mean, the only success story that they probably could say is in 1995 when we sent a tar to the IMF. But what sort of success story was that? Because at the end of the day, we had liberalized our economy in the early 1990s, and that is what created the fall of the dollar, of the Jamaican dollar, because we opened up our economy, liberalized it, and allowed our domestic manufacturing sector to fall, to collapse. It was as a result of the IMF's policies that led to that disastrous collapse. And afterwards, we were able to say ta-ta to the IMF when we were actually collapsing as a country. After they left, every sector began to fall, and you really, really wonder what was behind the scenes and what behind the scenes agreement they had in terms of collapsing the entire economy. That is not a success story. That is a disaster. It is a story that people have not been able to come to grips with, understanding that almost the entire Jamaican economy in the 1990s collapsed. People who had businesses and who were doing very well overnight, I'm saying overnight, literally, this is not now a metaphorical language, literally, their businesses collapsed. And people were demanded to pay high interest rates. And their debt, climbed 3-4 times or more what they had bargained for with the banks. And the United States citizens need to be aware of what happened in the 1990s in Jamaica, because it's going to happen on a greater scale in the United States of America. I guarantee you that that same catastrophe that took place in Jamaica in the 1990s is going to happen in the United States. And one day, Americans are going to wake up and see that the entire economic structure has collapsed. Because this is the direction in which the world is heading. If we're still talking about the IMF and the World Bank in the 21st century, when we know that the Bretton Woods Agreement collapsed in the early part of the 1970s, in 1971 to be more specific. It shows you that we're living in ancient times. And the IMF and the World Bank have not modernized their system. They use very, what should I say now, deceptive language. That's what they do. They use deceptive language. And lots of people around the world are deceived by what they do. But, I always say to people, don't tell me that you love me. Show me that you love me. And the IMF, to date, has not shown the world, has not convinced the world that they are on a quest to improve the economic standards of third world countries. They have not done so today or to date. They have not done so. And we can see the effects of what happened in Argentina in the early 2000s and the disastrous, catastrophic effects of the policies of the IMF and the World Bank. Yet, even though Jamaicans understand, particularly economists, Jamaican economists understand what happened in these countries, like Argentina, we still continue to propagate this spurious narrative that the IMF is there to develop and to also lift our economy to a certain level of prosperity. At least giving us, this great foundation on which to build. And that is not true. Excuse me. Whether we like it or not, the IMF is just a new form of slavery. And I have said it on this channel a number of times, that the IMF is a new form of slavery. Without the metal chains in an imperialist order in which the poorer nations work to transfer their wealth to sustain the lifestyles of the rich, Western industrialized nations. Correct? So it's often interesting to watch Jamaicans in the diaspora, particularly those who live in the US and Canada and the UK, but particularly in the United States. When they're having the conversations about Jamaica's economy, they tend not to look at what the effects of the US policies through the IMF and World Bank have on small economies like Jamaica. They tend to ignore that. They just like to compare and contrast Jamaica to the United States. And I'm not saying that you cannot look at good policies, but you also have to look at the context. You have to examine the context and the reason in which or for which the United States economy is, well, it's not progressing very well, but it's ahead of the Jamaica's economy. Light years ahead of that economy, because we know slavery was one, colonialism was another, and the fact of the matter, we have neo-colonialism, which after the British left us, they left us into the hands of the Americans. And who you think controlled the bauxite and all these industries in Jamaica? For the most part, the US and their investors controlled them. So while we were enjoying this great economic growth in the 1960s, as we like to brag, oh, Jamaica was growing at this exponential rate. But the profits were not staying in Jamaica. And we had few Jamaican entrepreneurs. Okay, so we have to look at these historic understanding, and we've got to look at the context and learn to contextualize things and begin to read more of the history. I think that we do not read enough as a people, and we just look at the news, we look at the newspapers, and then we begin to say that this is what it's all about. Do you know that I have not even followed what was happening in the local government elections? Because, I know it's political theater. If you understand history, if you understand politics, and you read books that help you to delve deeper into how these guys think, what the agenda is, because the agenda is set. And I've been saying that to you since I have created this channel, that the agenda is set, and it's for you and I to look carefully at what the agenda is. But the agenda is not to improve your life or the lives of your children. And I hope you understand that. And for those of you who have children, you've got to help them to understand that this world is not a level playing field. And very soon, some of the very rights, the basic rights that they think that they should have, they're not going to have them. And what are the things that they should do? Because sometimes we're heading into that situation where we think that, yeah, this is my right and nobody should be able to step on my right. And that is true. But look at this country called Jamaica. That was one of the most rebellious slave plantations. Right? Rebellion after rebellion happened in Jamaica. And right now, we are being re-enslaved. And the population doesn't know that because they're so glued to what is going on Cliff Hughes, Nationwide, and CVM, and Television Jamaica. And they say, every time you talk to them, they say, who said? And why are you following slavishly? Why are you following blindly what these people tell you? And these are not people who you perhaps will say are dunces. These are people who purport to have studied, some of whom have PhDs. And they keep following. They're looking at stats, and these stats are supposed to be true. And when you look at the life, because yeah, if the stats were true, the stats are true. But if you're looking at the stats and the realities and they do not align, they do not conform, why do you continue to believe in the stats that are provided by these government officials? Why do you do that? I don't understand that for the life of me. To seem that you are bright, to seem that you're intelligent, to seem that you are mathematically inclined, it boggles the mind why people continue year after year to believe the official narrative of governments. I don't understand, particularly the Jamaican government, which is doing everything, perhaps in secrecy. In the case of Jamaica, the foreign debt is now 8.6 billion US dollars. And the local debt designated in Jamaican dollars is 817 billion Jamaican dollars. This massive debt only exacerbates the living condition of the poor people and the middle class. So not only the poor people, but the middle class are going to be impacted. And you've got to understand that. And some of you are working down there, and because you're living day to day and month to month, and you're doing pretty well, and I say thank God for his mercies that you have a stable job down there. But for heaven's sake, you've got to look at the big picture. When I talk to people other times, even including the United States, people look at their microeconomic level and what they're doing and what their colleagues are doing and what their friends are doing, and they're not looking, they are unable to look at the big picture, because only remember now that you are operating within the context of the big picture. And if you're not looking at the big picture, then it's going to the small picture that you're living in, that small bubble under which you operate or in which you operate, you are going to be impacted and impacted negatively. You have to understand that. Now, one can sense the obvious frustration in Dr. Nigel Clarke's private November 2023 report to the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission, where he confessed, listen to this, that Jamaica may be unable to make payments on its debt, including the notes. One of the things that also is very interesting to me, when I talk to people, they tend to say to me, when we had the lockdowns. Oh yeah, the Jamaican government did very well. And my question to them was, you're shutting down an economy that was already barely above ground, right? The Jamaican economy is barely above ground. It's ready to be buried, right? It's almost ready to be buried. And you are going to shut down the lifeblood of the economy, which is doing business, and say that, and come out thinking that you are going to do well, and that you have the stable inflation and you're growing at 1 or 2%. I don't know. It is nonsense. That is wishful thinking. That is wishful thinking. I mean, if you speak to medical experts, for example, even the person who is paralyzed, they encourage them to do some walking. I mean, find something to hold on to and do some walking, move your limbs so that your limbs can get some life into it and perhaps not allow you to die before time. We're talking about the lifeblood of the Jamaican economy. And the entire economy was shut down for almost 2 years, practically. And you think that we were going to open up again and walk solidly on our two legs? Do you think we were going to be able to walk strongly on our two legs, having been sitting down for almost 2 years? And I thought that the government would have found something innovative to spur the economy along, something like, with all of that land we have down there, let these idle men plant them, put them to work. And we could have come out, at least after 2 years, have some good products to sell the world. Healthy Jamaican yams and potatoes. Why not say, I don't believe in that, but why not market our yams and say that, yeah, these are the Usain Bolt's yams. And if you, and if you eat those yams, you are going to be able to run as fast as Usain Bolt and the other athletes in Jamaica. Market. These are marketing. That's what they do to us. So market your products. I'm not in support of lying, because that's what advertisements do. But that's a game that you guys play. And that is a game that the IMF and the World Bank play also. Jamaica may well face a dollar whine, a sharp rise and fall in the country's exchange rate in relation to the American dollar, it was noted. And I don't know if we were privy to this information, or maybe we were. I don't think I was privy to that information of what Dr. Clark said in November of 2023. But I more see a further devaluation of the Jamaican dollar relative to the American dollar. This is because a rise in the value of the Jamaican dollar could only come from the achievement of fantastic economic growth, and this is clearly unlikely in the present political economic scenario and the prevailing general international crisis of capitalism. Now, I did also say that this economic growth, we would have to grow at an average rate of 5% over the next probably 10 years if we're going to, 5% every year, if we are going to lift ourselves out of this economic rut that we have created, that we have manufactured with the help of our foreign donors. We have manufactured the economic disaster in which we find ourselves. And I've always questioned, and people don't need to say Andrew is bad mind. What is the purpose of the University of the West Indies? What is the purpose of the universities that we have down there? I mean, are they coming together? What type of research are they doing? Are they challenging the policies of the IMF and the World Bank, or are they in sync with this disastrous economic policies? Right? I don't know. Indeed, Dr. Clark is telling the American SEC that Jamaica may default on its debt. something I don't think we've ever done. And if we default on our debt, I can tell you that if you think things are bad down there, if you think the crime and violence is horrendous, you have better rethink. You've got to rethink your position, right? Because we're living in heaven now. If we ever decide, and all you have to ask is Argentina, and when they defaulted on their debt in the early 2000s, and the devastating effect that it had on their economy and on people's lives and livelihoods. And remember that Argentina was once known, which Jamaica has never been known, but Argentina was once known as the Italy of Latin America, right? Having a sophisticated economy, as they thought, which they further learned was not so. Dr. Clark, hinting to the US CEC that Jamaica faced difficulty in borrowing money, is a direct manifestation of the very vicious cycle of foreign debt and poverty creation in this imperialist one-done world order, because that's what it's all about. And that is why the US went down there for the Douglas, Christopher Douglas, to show who the Don is. And when the people in Tivoli Gardens wanted to challenge the US, and the US said, oh yeah, right? And we learned afterwards that the IMF imposed this draconian structural adjustment program on the island, a program which the IMF knew that Jamaica could not manage, could not handle. But they did it. And they used what's her name? Portia Simpson Miller, because she was female and she was coming from the bowels of the working class. And she deceived our people into accepting that austere program, because the people believed her. They believed that she had their best concern. But let us digress for a minute and recall that in October 2023, Dr. Clark boasted about Jamaica's macroeconomic fundamentals, the best performing economy that represents the best that we have ever had. And that is what you need to understand. They are going to tell you what you want to hear and what makes them look good. And they got lots of media attention from their international enablers, right? And you believed them. It's coming out of New York. It's coming from Wall Street. You believe it. It's believable. Anything that comes from these international news sources, you believe them. Even among our educated class or classes, they do believe these international media houses, which are just mere propaganda tools, if you educate yourselves. Now, in fact, as we now know, Dr. Clark, in Jamaica's November 9, 2023 report to the American Security and Exchange Commission, complained that the government is in a situation where it may be difficult to get money to borrow. And we know what happened with this American Security and Exchange Commission. You know, I am wondering if this whole drama surrounding the what was it, the SSE or the SSC or whatever you call it. I wonder if that drama was around the whole notion that we don't have money to pay our debt. And they're talking about surplus. What is a surplus about? How can you have surplus when your economy is in debt, in high debt? Not only high debt, but you have so many poor people down there. And your infrastructure down there is collapsing, if it has not already collapsed. Because when I hear the news coming out of the hospitals, I'm really wondering if the situation there can be more dismal. I really wonder. It doesn't sound like to me a civilized place. Jamaica does not sound to me like a civilized country. And how could it be when you have an IMF program that is so catastrophic and nobody is there to challenge them? Nobody. And you know, the Hillary Beckles, Sir Hillary Beckles, you are there heading the reparations struggle and wanting to receive reparations. I am here to say that we don't need any reparations if this is how we manage our economies. And we continue to lie to the people. And if we're going to get all this money and then the money is going to be siphoned off back to Washington or to London, what is the purpose? And then you, the guys who are just like the national clerks who are managing the reparations and the proceeds that come therefrom, all you'll be doing pocketing your money and the rest of it will be going right back to Washington and to London and France, wherever it's coming from. Because my understanding, a lot of times when the IMF sends money, it's not really directly money that they've sent. And it really goes back to Washington. That's why we're not seeing anything. There's really nothing that we're seeing going on the island. Thankfully, the Chinese are there and they're pretending to build infrastructure, but they're building it for themselves. They want to enhance their business. They want to be able to move from one section of the country to the other at a more rapid pace. So they build you nice highways, but you have to, while they're benefiting from that infrastructure in doing their own businesses, at the same time, they're making money because you and your children will have to pay them back. And we're not talking about that, but the Chinese are benefiting, are gaining benefit. They're benefiting twice because they're making money because the infrastructure helps them to do business. At the same time, we have to pay them all of this stole money and the debt that was racked up for building these highways. Now, he also said that Jamaica's exchange rate vis-a-vis the American dollar was unsustainable. Let me repeat that. He also said that the Jamaica's exchange rate vis-a-vis the American dollar was unsustainable. And I would think so. Because if you're not manufacturing, if you're not producing, if you are not exporting really anything, how can you have a stable dollar? Whatever they're doing is bogus. And I knew that. I knew that this, whatever their exchange rate is, it's just not real. It is artificial, artificially designed to fool you, to deceive you. Because as I've said to you, the human heart is above all things desperately wicked. Right? The World Bank, in their October 2023 report, said that Jamaica was ranked as one of the slowest growing economies in Latin America and the Caribbean, because we are really following the footsteps of Haiti. We are following in the footsteps of Haiti very fast, because Haiti is our model. Right? Haiti is our model. It is the standard. And last night I watched a brief video of the Jamaica linguistic department. They were having an interview with Kingsley Ben Adair, Faye Ellington, and this lady, I think her name is Brett. She is, a British American, and the one of the lecturers in the department at the University of the West Indies. That professor is in the linguistics department, from the linguistics department. And they were talking about the Jamaican language, that's the Creole, and how it should be internationalized, should be, made into official language in Jamaica. And when I look at what we are facing and the fact that we are not as competitive as we are on the global scene, why are we expending so much effort at this juncture of the history talking about Jamaican language? Because Jamaican language is not going to help us. And I could see that the British American and the Kingsley Adair was not as, they were not excited or as excited as the Faye Ellingtons and the guy from the linguistics department of the University of the West Indies. They were not excited, right? You were trying to imbibe that enthusiasm for the Jamaican language in them, but they were not particularly excited. They acted to appease you, to appease the Faye Ellingtons and the host of the program, but they weren't particularly excited because the Jamaican language is not an important language right now, especially in light of what is happening in global affairs. The Jamaican language is not an important language at this juncture of Jamaica's history. And yes, it can be used as a marketable tool to sell a product like the movie, the One Love movie. A marketing tool. And to get the viewers to think that this is an authentic Bob Marley, when many people are suggesting that the movie is fictitious for the most part. But it makes it authentic by imitating Bob's sounds, imitating Bob's language, right? It's just a tool. Come on, guys, at the University of the West Indies, you should know that, especially if you study linguistics. It is just a tool that they're using. They're actually using you because you're slaves. And I think the whole purpose of an education is to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. But obviously, it seems that the University of the West Indies is there to enhance mental enslavement, particularly in the Department of Economics. Because I have not seen to date any of those professors at the university who have come out and who have challenged the IMF and World Bank's policies. I have not seen to date, and I would like to see what are they teaching the students at the University of the West Indies in terms of economic development. And we have this astute, we've had this astute philosopher in the form of Marcus Garvey, and we have just thrown him out of the picture and given lip service to his self-reliant philosophies. And we eat up, we embrace all the philosophies that come from Western Europe or from North America. These are the great economists, even though they're talking nonsense, right? Because that is how we have been conditioned. Our educational system has conditioned us to operate in a system where we think that Europeans are still superior to us. And that is why we have embraced the One Love movie, the Hollywood version of Bob Marley, and Hollywood version of the Jamaican culture and its language. Now, the World Bank, in their October 2023 report, said that Jamaica was ranked as one of the, I read this already, key reasons the World Bank gave were the reliance on low productivity services. So we are not producing, and that is obvious. Why do they have to tell us the things that are already obvious to us, that we're not producing? Yes, it's obvious that Jamaica is not producing and went even further not producing in shutting down the economy for 2 to 3 years. You closed down, you locked down the economy for 2 years. Not doing anything when we were already starving. And thankfully, the people in the Jamaican diaspora were able to send money to sort of ease the pain and suffering of their loved ones there. Because if not, I don't know how they would have managed. I don't know how Jamaicans would have managed if the members of the diaspora did not send them food and money, among other needs, economic and social needs of the people. And these are not wants or needs, basic needs of the people. And nobody can go to Jamaica and not be shocked by the level of poverty that is on the island. Yet we are talking about Bob Marley and One Love. What is that all about? What is that all about? How is that One Love going to help to feed the poor person in Kingston or in Trenchtown? It does nothing to him or her. The lack of innovation in the economy affects the ability of small and medium-sized business to develop and grow. And they don't want them to grow or develop, because half the members of diaspora, when they go back to Jamaica and they want to set up a business, oh, no, you can't set up a business because you haven't been living here, and they give them a warm time to even set up a bank account. Yes, the bank laws in Jamaica are anti-development. They would rather give you or loan you money to buy a car than to loan you money to develop some small business. That is a fact, and that is the reality that is on the island. It is anti-small business. Anything that is big and foreign, large corporate businesses, yes, come, because you are called foreign investors, and we need direct foreign investments in this country. And people like the Bruce Goldings, that's exactly how they express themselves. And the bedrock of any growing capitalist economy are small businesses. If they're not if they're not on the agenda, if small businesses are not on the agenda, then you know that your economy is not going to lift off the ground. Excessive cost of light and telecommunication services, which we also know people can't pay their light bills. People can't do businesses because they can't afford the electric bill. It's too high. You can't even use the air because it's just too high. It is one of the highest, if not the highest, in the world. And it is deliberately so. We are slaves. A weak business environment, the corrosive impact of crime and violence. And I would put this at number one. The corrosive impact of crime and violence should be at number one. Because if we should take care of this, I think a lot would be taken care of if we just deal with the crime and the violence. Do we need, as he's asking here, the World Bank to tell us what our lying eyes already know? That is all. And I'm happy he said that, because this is what I'm saying. And you probably think I'm exaggerating. We are lying to ourselves. And that is the essence of insanity. When we see these high murder rates, and other countries also have crime. When we talk about poverty, other countries also have poverty. Look at the United States, and you begin to talk about, places, communities in the United States where you have people impoverished. But when you go to the United States, the level of poverty as you land does not hit you like that. When you go to Barbados, that level of poverty does not also hit you. And people who have been to Trinidad and other Caribbean islands say the same thing. Why do we like to sprawl and to function in that society where there's this great divide between the rich and the poor? Why do we like to do that? Because our minds are enslaved. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. You have to begin to emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. That is the most toxic form of slavery. When we have accepted that we are slaves. Really, we don't, but it helps to debunk the myth that there is any bright ray of sunshine ahead under the IMF political economic strategy pursued by the government. There is none. Sorry, Jamaicans, there is no ray of sunlight with this program. And we don't even know what's going on with this program either. You know, as I've said earlier on, we don't know anything about the MOE. The MO, is it MOA, MOU? Right, we don't know anything about the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding. Right? We need to know what is going on. Andrew Holness, we need Nigel Clark. We need to know what is going on with that IMF program. The citizens of Jamaica are paying you to do the job, and you've got to report back to them. It's more important to report to Jamaicans than to the officials in Washington, because they are the ones who are paying you. Well, perhaps the ones in Washington pay you also to oversee the program, you know, so there is a conflict of interest. Maybe they're paid more by these people, who knows? Now, look at the foreign debt slavery, what this guy is suggesting here. My dear friends, poor people are hungry and angry and want to explore new possibilities to improve their lives. And in Jamaica, we like to say, a hungry man is an angry man. And an angry man is a guy who can wreak some damage on, right? Some real damage on when he's angry, right? So we're already an angry society. Why do we want to have so many hungry people down there? To make them even more angry and crass and brutish, ready to kill at any given moment. Why do we encourage that sort of environment? Which, to some extent, is deliberate, is intentional. A good measure of this is the high migration rate among educated Jamaicans. According to the latest data, over the past several decades, close to 1 million highly skilled and trained Jamaicans have migrated to the United Kingdom, United States, and Canada. So we're just having that mass outflow of trained and skilled people, professionals, leaving the shores of Jamaica for greener pastures. And they don't look back. Right? So where is this economic growth and economic expansion that we like, that, you know, we hear the people like Andrew Holness says that Nigel Clarks speak about? Right? This is a negative phenomenon, but overall remittances from abroad have been one of the band-aids. I have also called that keeping the Jamaican economy afloat. It is one of the band-aids. And every successive year, we add it to the wound, and the wound is keeping the economic and political wound is getting deeper and deeper. And very soon, we will, just like, you know, Bob Marley, unfortunately, will have to die. Right? We will have to die. The socioeconomic and political environment in Jamaica is painful. It is painful. And one of the things that really makes me so passionate about it is because I see that many of our people do not understand. Right? They don't understand. They don't have a grip of what is happening on the island. They don't understand. Right? And it would be nice if our politicians were in charge, but as I've told you, they are not in charge. Meanwhile, Jamaica has $4 billion invested in America to sustain their economic growth. $4 billion. Why not produce a national plan with all stakeholders involved? Perhaps use some of this money to create a national investment fund which no government or politician or their friends can access. The country cannot keep depending on the Chinese to provide an economic lifeline. China has been a good friend of Jamaica, but we need to develop a plan for national self-reliance, which that we should, but we're not doing. Instead, we are actually allowing these people, these foreigners, to use our resources to build their own countries. That is what we are doing. Jamaica must be grateful, but must produce its own national investment fund that can drive industrialization and agricultural food supply expansion as a means towards lifting the country out of poverty. The country is dependent on food imports to feed the nation in a country that has vast amounts of land. That is something that is also, I can't understand. And not only land, but fertile land. Right? Does this really make sense? It doesn't, because it's a country filled with insane people from top to bottom, right? It's a country that is filled with insane people, high levels of insanity. Now, where do we go from here? That's the question being asked. Every political and economic crisis creates a challenge and the possibility for hope and a vision for a brighter tomorrow. And this local government elections may be a clarion call for a change of political economic strategy, because that is what we need now. We need economic heroes. Well, we've had enough political heroes. We need economic and education heroes. Right? Well, if we needed the political heroes, they are the ones who have to, in their administration, lead us into the land of Canaan, the land of milk and honey. The people are yearning for that. And it's time for us to stop talking about culture and language and entertainers and sports, whatever. Celebrate them, and stop. Right? Celebrate them for their purpose, a day and it's over. We need to wake up to the socio-economic and socio-political realities that bedevil the island. And these realities are stark, horrific. Right? It has been a hard IMF road to travel and a long poverty-stricken way to go. That is what poor people are told, but they just don't want the IMF no more. They don't want it anymore. They're tired of this IMF nonsense, right? The people are tired of this IMF nonsense. I think the people in Jamaica, from the lower stratum of society, are much smarter than Nigel Clark. I really think they are. Because if you went to university, you went to Oxford University, and you cannot see that what is going on is nonsense. And you come and you make platitudinous speeches, and you act as if, yes, it has lifted us up, it's transforming the Jamaican economy, it is doing all this grandiose stuff and accomplishing a goal that is going to liberate Jamaicans. I don't know how these guys sleep. I really do not know how Nigel Clark and his team sleep. How do you go to bed and sleep? And you are driving around the destitution and the suffering of the large majority of our people. And I believe our people are tired. Our people are tired. They're tired. Tired is not even the word. They are exhausted. They have put up with so much over the years. And as I've said yesterday in my video, generations have come and generations have gone, and nothing significant has changed on that island. It's the same thing. I was speaking to someone when I was visiting a country, And I met a person who had lived in Jamaica for some years. And I think that she still visits the island very frequently. And I was asking her some years ago, so have you seen the changes down there? And she looked at me quizzically and said to me, what change? What change, Andrew, are you talking about? It's the same. It is the same. And this is a foreigner. This is somebody who is not Jamaican. But she could have seen that nothing really has changed. It's the same. And she went there from 1979. Huh? 1979. And nothing has really changed, apart from a few highways and some changes here and there. But we have not transformed the economy. We have had piecemeal changes here and there. But that is not going to be able to lift our people out of the economic doldrum and the economic rot in which they find themselves. And our people are tired. They cannot be bothered. So the best thing, 3 options. 1, they immigrate, which many are doing, and they can't be bothered, right? Or you stay there and you become a part of the problem by attaching yourselves to criminal elements and to kill and to inflict untold harms upon the populace, right? Or you just remain quiet until you die. Those are the 3 options that Jamaicans are faced to confront. They have no other option, right? They stay silent until they die. This is something that we need to correct. And unfortunately, at this juncture of the history, I don't think we can correct it. I don't think so. I don't think so. I think we have taken too long and the time has passed. Outside of a miracle from God, and we would have to listen. And we would have to follow every word that God indicates. And he could do it, but we would have to obey. One of the things about us is that we like to follow what goes on in other countries. And we don't understand truthfully who we are as a people. We haven't yet come to grips. I think we see ourselves as free people, and we aren't. We are still an enslaved people. And when you walk the streets of Kingston, that's what you see, unfortunately. An enslaved group of people. We need to rethink our positions, and we need to get things on a firmer foundation. And yes, and I'm calling on the politicians because they are the ones who are leading us. And it's time for them to come together and to join hands and hearts and say that we have to fight against the common enemy. The IMF is not our friend. The IMF and World Bank are not our allies. They're there to inflict serious economic harms and pain on our people. Thank you so much for joining. I look forward to seeing you in another chat. Please be reminded to like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment.